if you've been listening to Initial Access for a while, we spend a lot of time covering what's on the headlines, right? We talk about breaches, vulnerabilities, redactors, and AI, a lot of it, I know. But yeah, now is the time to step back a little bit and ask kind of different questions or the same question, maybe. So instead of what happened, let's talk about what are you supposed to do about it. So today is one of those special episodes and the first one. So welcome to this first special episode of the Managed Services Department. So what we are going to talk today is about different things. One is threat intelligence and and vulnerability intelligence, attack surface management, continuous discovery. So we are going to probably talk about some of the headlines that we already did in the past, and yeah, just that's from a new perspective about that stuff, basically. So I'm Sergio Villegas. I'm a senior managing analyst for Bishop Fox, and with me I have Richard Brown, senior managing operator, John Hunt, senior security engineer, Dylan Sparks, senior operator. And welcome, everyone. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Special episode. I like it.
Yeah, and I know for our listeners, it feels weird because it's kind of the same people, but yeah, just different mindset.
Yeah, and we talk all day. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm tired of talking to Richard. Can we do an episode where I don't talk to Richard? That's actually specifically what I want. And
yeah, other people,
anybody but specifically.
Nah. Anyway, jokes aside, it's always a pleasure to have you, to have us, right? So I have four things, the agenda for today, four things we would like to discuss. One is quick debrief on DEF CON. I know we are recording just after DEF CON happened, so we have some quick stories for you. Then I have three particular stories of headlines, if you will, that I like to revisit. One is JadePuffer. The second one is escape models in OpenAI, particularly. And the third one is Hades, or meaning Shai-Hulud, or however that's pronounced. Three kind of stories that I know we discussed in the past, and particularly we talk about how quick we are reacting to those. So yeah, for starters, let's talk about DEF CON. I know DEF CON just happened over this weekend, right? I know this is going live later, but DEF CON just happened this weekend. So quick takeaways from my end, right? We participated in a lot of places. We were in the AI Village, we were in Cloud Village, Red Team Village, Game Hacking Village, Noob Village, and OSINT for Good, right? Kind of just putting the word there. The capabilities that our team has is very broad, right? Even though we are a very hyper-focused offensive security firm, we actually cover a lot of topics. So I don't know, you guys, what were your favorite moments of DEF CON over this weekend?
Yeah, so John and I actually went there and had a good time. So we saw a lot of talks talking about. We had a live podcast from there. We were at the Red Tail party and everything. It was a really good time. It was interesting. This had been my second year. I go every other year. This has been my second year at the new location. And I think this was your first year, John?
Yeah. It was my first new location, yeah.
Yeah. Still takes a minute to get used to it. It's not the old way, but this year they had the headphones down there. That was a good change.
Yeah.
I'll say.
Yeah. So for anybody that wasn't there, right? So, Richard, you said you were there the year before, or the first year, I guess, that they were in the new location. Can you tell us a little bit more just about how it used to be versus how it is?
Yeah. So before when it was at the hotels, it was at Flamingo, Caesars, and I can't remember the third one, but it's very disjointed and you had a rush back and forth. And if a talk started around the same time, as you know, Vegas is very large, you were not making it back in time. So if you basically had to choose a talk, and in the old days, you used to have line con where you could wait for the talk before yours and then sit in there the whole time. And then you were able to see the talk you want. They've changed a lot of that now. And now you have to get not tickets per se, but you can't stand in line and wait for the next talk. So you have to leave the room after each one. But the new place at the convention makes it much more connected. So, which John and I were talking, somehow felt less so.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's all under one roof now, which is very helpful for people.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to get to the stuff you want to get to, right? As far as a time management thing, and and the headphones helped a lot. That was like the big thing for me is like, because it's all under one roof, it's a lot noisier. But the stuff that I actually cared to like, if I wanted to go into a specific talk, if I wanted to go to a specific workshop or something in a different village, I didn't have to like sit there and like strain to hear the speaker. I could actually like engage with them and whatnot. And there were still some other villages that were like outside of that main wing that were like super intimate settings. Like the payment village is the one that sticks out in my head of like, you walk in, it's just like, I mean, it's 2 rooms and, it's probably could hold, I don't know, upwards of maybe 50 people in there, but it was a very like engaged setting. So I thought that was really cool.
And I think that's a great word kind of to start off engagement, right? Like talking about engagement. And I think something that is kind of curious for me is from your perspective, guys. When we engage in this type of events, normally we have like proof of concepts, CVEs, novels of dropping on those events, right? Because that's a perfect place to show like, hey, I got a new POC on a remote code, right? Like from that perspective, how do you manage, or what's the workflow to kind of operationalize some of these, right? Like, how do you get from, hey, I saw a conference at DEF CON to like, now I'm testing that with my customers because it's important, right? Like it will be out there in the wild.
It's very different. Oh, go ahead, Dylan. You want to say something?
Was I?
It lit up. It lit up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very different now than it was when I first started going. When I first started going, I was doing more consulting work. So I had ongoing engagements that were internal, external, physical, and then when I saw something new, I could use it the next day. And where nowadays, I feel like they're getting a little more respect for the platform. DEF CON used to be this like Wild West of events, and people used to drop 0 days on stage, and it was like crazy. And then you were like, operationalizing them that same day. Whereas now there's a little more respect. So now they release less 0 days, or I should say less impactful 0 days, and do more of the responsible disclosure process. So the demo's like, hey, 4 months ago, we found this.
Right.
And now we're releasing it now because there's already a patch, CVE to follow. And so it's much less about having to act on it right that day. And there's time to go back.
Yeah. Ironically, there is, to like, not to take it all the way into like, they're a totally professional, bunch of or crowd and engagement sort of crowd. There was still that one incident right after the con where someone on a flight to Atlanta decided they were going to Wi-Fi pineapple the place. Don't ever do that.
Yes.
That's real bad.
Yeah. But, I didn't see that until you posted it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was fortunate that that was not my plane. So, but to that point though, like, I think that's like an important thing to show like the growth of like cybersecurity in general as a like, respected and formalized kind of industry now is, and I'm not going to like steal anything that he said before, because I know like, Jeff has mentioned this exactly like on the stage when he's done closing remarks before, but like, now they've got like policy at DEF CON. They have like, I think this last time, like the former director of the NSA, General Nakasone, was there at us doing another fireside chat. So it's like, this is no longer just like, the 90s culture hackers, right? That were just kind of breaking stuff for the sake of stuff, right? Now this is like a super formalized process. So I love seeing that.
Yeah. Speaking of 90s hackers, so we're walking down in the area and John like disappears from me. And I look over there and he's mesmerized because he had seen, you want to finish story?
No.
About the phone freaking?
Yeah. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to finish story? No.
No,
No. I
like it. All right. So going back to like you were asking Sergio about like what's some of the cool stuff we saw there. There, like you said, you turn the corner, it was on one edge of the village's side. They had like 4 or 5 payphones set up with like a PBX on the back end and everything to do like true to the term phone freaking. For like anybody that's like not old enough to know what a payphone was. Back in the day, I'll just say the day because I'm not gonna like point out a decade or anything like that. Telephones used to operate with like these dial tones and touch tones and whatnot. And there's a mechanism called phreaking, pH phreaking, that you would use. At the time, it was like a whistle out of a cereal box.
It's like dial-up tones, right?
Yeah, it's dial-up tones.
I think Kevin Mitnick has a book that goes into some very hyperbolic stories about the fun of phone phreaking. Yeah, I think shameless plug. It's called Ghost in the Wire, I think.
Is it? Does it talk about Captain Crunch? Do you know?
It might.
Okay.
I read this book probably like 5 years ago.
Yeah. That's fair. I'll quiz you on it later.
Proof that I read.
Yeah. Proof that Dylan can read. But yeah, like that was hacking at the time, was mimicking these dial-up tones in order to do whatever, right? Get a connection, get a free call. Usually at the time it was get like long distance calls and stuff like that. But they had an entire village set up not only to just like, relearn those like foundational concepts that like, brought hacking into the forefront, but also like, they had like a CTF set up as part of that as well. And there's a ton of other cool stuff. It's really cool that like there was a lot of new villages, or like new to me, I guess, because I've been in a couple of years, villages that I thought did a great job of bridging what may not be considered like cybersecurity hacking, but use those same skill sets to like show like, hey, like my greatest example here is the game hacking village, right? That's relatively new. That was actually like my first foray into hacking, was like doing like NES ROM hacking. And then that, somebody basically came along one day and was like, hey, that's like pretty similar to doing binary exploitation from like a basic, like foundational level. And now we're using those same mechanisms to teach, the next generation, which I think is phenomenal. I think like gamifying learning obviously is like a tried and true method. And I think like what better way than teaching people, the in the places that they are already at, right? The younger generation especially, I'm going to point myself, I'm got a game going behind me, right? Like video games are cool. What better way to learn than using the thing you're already interested in?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And on the flip side of that, the new age hacking of AI world, right?
Right.
Every talk had something about AI in it of some sort.
Yeah.
So it's, it was nice seeing full circle, like John was saying. Start with the phone phreaking, ending at AI hacking. Well, not ending, unless the overlords want to take us out. But it was nice seeing the full spectrum. So
yeah.
Which
I think, I believe, talking about AI, right? Like, right to our first story, because our first story is actually AI, and it's very, very particular, right? Like, is it novel? Is it not novel? I don't know. I think we are just in the right time to talk about it. So our first story, JadePuffer, first fully autonomous AI ransomware. Something that is kind of interesting for me is that, and I think that's part of why conferences as high level as these have changed, is because we see the same actors assisting this conference, right? Like they work same cybersecurity space as us, so they are seeing these new techniques and they develop this kind of stuff. This is a very particular one. This was activity seen in July, early July this year, and really quick, right? Kind of read out JadePuffer, first fully autonomous LLM-driven ransomware operation with no human operator directing the attack. Particularly what this uses is a specific CVE 2025-3248. And that's the initial access, right? What it does is it gets to the initial access, it exploits it, and then it kind of starts spreading. Something that is very particular, right, is that it tries to it's weird because the whole operation behind it's kind of not new or very mature compared to other ransomware as a service kind of scenarios. But how it's driven, it's kind of what's new in here, right? And I have two questions in here, right? Like your perspective. When a novel attack like this drops, what's the validation workflow for you guys, right? Like how do you look at this and be like, hey, I need to look at the CVE, I need to look at the TTPs, right? And how quickly can you determine whether a customer environment is exposed and potentially exploitable? I think that's the interesting question, right? Versus just theoretic, versus just vulnerable in theory, which is another point of view.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's interesting given the autonomous aspect of it, right? Like from start to finish, how quickly it can be run and at scale. So trying to defend against that uh, creates its own challenges, its own unique challenges. From the very beginning, with any sort of attack chain, really what you're looking at is trying to identify all the moving pieces that encompass that specific, CVE or exploit chain. And then the first thing you're looking at is, how do I fingerprint this, right? So that I can quickly detect my inventory and wrangle or herd all of the cats, if you will, that might be affected by this. And again, a lot of that is looking for shadow IT that you may have missed previously, right? It's exactly why we're running an active scan versus a static Excel sheet that I looked at a week or two ago, or the last time it got opened and updated, which you're hoping is fairly frequent. Gosh, if that's how you're operating.
Yeah, it's so common nowadays.
Yeah. So again, you want to start with that active fingerprinting, right? What's again, that's going to tell you a few things. What's actually up and what's reachable from where I'm scanning from, right? And there is a difference between externally exposed assets and internally exposed assets. But once you actually get that asset pool and that identification done, then you can start looking at more verbose fingerprints. So looking at specific versions impacted by the CVE or that exploit chain. Are there any weird caveats that, while this is a vulnerable version, it's not actually exploitable because of maybe a configuration? I can't tell you how many CVEs I've read in the last couple months where it's like, under prime conditions, because we disabled all of the security features that naturally come on this product,
right?
We were able to get an RCE. And it's like, yeah, dude, just log into the box locally at that point. Like, come on, man.
I saw one recently that was like, it was like a TLS vuln, but it was like the vulnerability was like, you have to downgrade TLS to an existing vulnerable, like something that's vulnerable to other exploits anyways. It was like, well, that's not really, that's not new and novel. I think the other big point is like impact, right? If something's exploitable, but all it does is tell you the version number of the software that's running. I mean, yeah, that's not great, but that's not the same thing as getting arbitrary like code execution on a box. And so for me, like when I'm looking at like triaging, like on the research side of things, like that's like an immediate scoping concern of mine is like, okay, reachability and impact, like where do those two align to like create a big boom? And then, how widespread does it go from there? Right. Richard, I'm definitely curious. You've been doing this for longer than I have. I'm definitely curious what your take is.
No, you're right there. I mean, qualifying CVEs is our job, right? And when we look at, there's two sides of the coin. One is Sergio's side, which I'm hoping he's talking about, the targeted nature of it, and one is opportunistic. And we're trying to cover the opportunistic side of it. You're probably not a target for this, but as most hackers do, they spray and pray. They get something, and then they hope it's something juicy at the end. But I always have a problem when they're like, oh, it's autonomous. Because we've had worms forever that just burrow in. We've had viruses that self-replicate. So it's like, oh, this is the first ever autonomous. I mean, I remember not too long ago, there was a MongoDB. Is it MongoDB? I think it is. But it was a ransomware where they would ransom it and then send you the email, right? And I can't remember, it was in the news, but someone paid the ransom. They got their data unransomed and it was ransomed by someone else before them. So they had to go pay another ransom somehow. And it's like, so I think the Dylan and John hit on the head with qualifying it. And then the other aspect is going to be, are you at risk of this? And that's where I think, Sergio, your expertise comes in.
Yeah. I'm curious, especially on like Sergio's side. Like you're right. Like Richard, like we do a lot of look at like, I like how we put the opportunistic of just like, who, if anybody had the weapon, how can they, how could they use it?
Yeah.
From Sergio, from your point of view, like when you're looking at how does like a specific threat actor, how are they gonna use it? I'm super curious what that looks like on that.
100%. And I think it's part of the same qualification process, if you will, right? Because at the end of the day, when we talk about like, yes, threat actors, they have the same toolkits, they have the same exploits as we have, maybe more, right? Likely more than us. But they need a reason.
Yeah.
And that's the particularity in here, right? Like, hey, we are seeing this attack. I not saying for this particular headline, right? But let's say this particular headline in between lines, it says like it's against the financial sector in the US, right? And my customer, it's perhaps a random manufacturing company in Ecuador. I don't know, right? Like, are they the possibility of them being targeted by an actor? It's not necessarily the same as them being vulnerable by this, right? They are both relevant in its own way, right? One is from the vulnerability intelligence piece. Okay, yeah, they're vulnerable, right? Like they check all the marks to, hey, you have a potential risk in here. And you only need that threat. And I think that's where we share the word threat. The threat is that opportunity for someone to look at you being vulnerable. I mean, like, hey, here goes the hammer, basically, right?
Yeah.
And that's what Richard just mentioned, right? Like, it's like, are they likely to attack you? No. Does that make the impact or risk less? No, right? It just made you likely to be more aware that, hey, there is someone out there with a hammer targeting you in particular, right?
Yeah.
And you and the theory of it being vulnerable, because maybe you have an exposed, let's say, Mongo, right? Richard just speak on Mongo, so let's roll with it.
Yeah. I'll tackle all the big ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's say you have an exposed Mongo, right? But you can validate it's vulnerable. But you know someone is after Mongo in your industry sector, right? Like, you need to have a certain level of awareness, right? So I think it's a complement, right? One needs the other, but they are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And that's kind of interesting, right? Like seeing these different novel, right? For lack of a better word, I know it's not necessarily novel, but I didn't write the headlines, man.
Yeah. I'm just a hater. I hate how we have new names for the same attack, right?
Yeah.
I remember when credential stuffing came out, and I was like, oh, what is this thing? Oh, what is this? Password reuse? Password spraying? Like that's not what is I thought I was imagining like almost like an overflow of passwords. No, you put more than one password in there and it picks the one that's right. That's what I was imagining. And so I'm just a hater. I apologize.
No, that's perfectly fine. I think the podcasts have become just hating on the headline. Yeah. Talking about like hating new names for things, right? Let's talk about our second story here. Bridge, the Hugging Face bridge, the escape sandbox for the OpenAI. Yeah. I think we talked this a few weeks ago. This is something that happened between July 16-ish. Between July 16 to 21, several news reported this. Quick reminder of what happened here. During an internal capability evaluation, OpenAI's model, particularly GPT-5.6 Sol, and another unspecified pre-release escaped their sandbox, right? It's basically a zero-day package proxy that reaches the internet. So basically what happened is that you were able to bypass the different secret measures it had and provoke chain privilege escalation and lateral movement into the Hugging Face production infrastructure. That's kind of the story, right? There were some models running it. Something that was very interesting in here is that Hugging Face detected and contained it on July 16, right? Well, it wasn't publicly disclosed or let known to other people until 5 days later. OpenAI, then they connected the dots and say like, yeah, this happened. The root cause was allegedly Sandbox described as highly isolated. It wasn't, right? It was a very, it was complex in certain way. Just because escape sandbox kind of attacks are complex in that sense. Right. So yeah, questions for you guys. Kind of the interesting part. How often, and this is kind of the question of the same attack being renamed to make it new. It's not really new, right? Mm-hmm. How often do you find the same thing on an engagement, right? Where it's like, hey, I find same exact vulnerability since that I reported maybe 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, 1 year ago, right? If it's a long running customer, particularly for those customers that are like always active, like in a attack surface management type of service, right? What's the gap in here? Is that a technological gap? Is that a process gap? Why are you finding the same thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's been a while since that's happened to us. Since we're on the continuous side, we have this integration with clients where we can remediate right away, right? The point-in-time pen tests, I have several times where I've gone back the next year to the same client and had the same vulnerability. I remember I was on an internal, and this is years ago now, but I attacked them 3 years in a row and got DA the same path 3 years in a row, right? And that's not good to anybody because I waste my time doing those things. So anyway, but the same path happens a lot, and it's not even the same path. It's the same vulnerability. It's the same people using exposed misconfigurations, and then they get popped. Like, okay, cool. I'll use Craft CMS instead, but then they misconfigure that the similar way they would WordPress, and now I can install plugins and
right.
And so
they basically just assumed that by getting a different product or by getting a newer product or whatever, that would be the solution. But
right,
can't solve the misconfiguration problem like that.
100%.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
as like a networking nerd, like the first thing you think of, right, is like there's a difference between physical and logical isolation, right? Like in order to have logical isolation, something has to be talking to that or know of its existence and be monitoring it, right? And so in that case, you're already creating a one-to-one connection between two different things, right? So the like logical isolation part, I think is the biggest gap here when you're talking about like trying to isolate either an agent or some type of host. Just remember that logic can change, whether intentional or accidental, especially if you're a siloed organization, right? Like imagine your infrastructure admins don't know that something's even over there. And then they implement one rule higher somewhere in the hierarchy that's
right,
just
higher in the stack. Yeah.
I've got to go test something over here, but I'm being stopped by these intermediaries. So I'll just put this allow rule in real quick, and then suddenly, boop, that guy can escape. So
yeah. And I think you touched on two interesting points. One is the assumption that you're isolating your systems, right? Because the critical part in here was actually kind of a network. Yeah, you being a network guy, it was a network thing, right? Like, it wasn't that critical. It reached the internet. Once it reached the internet, it's like, yeah, I think that was the biggest issue. And the second thing you mentioned is like these kind of proxy packages. Like most organizations do not consider those like critical infrastructure, right? It's like, yeah, it's something that I have kind of inherit, if you will. So they don't consider that part of their attack surface. Even like thinking about like, or from our last story, we talk about like AI and them being on agents, right? Like, are we considering agents? Is now the AI agents that are running your MCP servers are part of your new attack surface, right? Like, organizations are not considering those security critical assets. So how do you, like, in this new era of AI, basically, how do you scope for or catch these in the infrastructure? Like Dylan mentioned, shadow IT, right? How do you catch that? How do you scope for that if that's not part of the initial scope, right? Like, it's even for us as the customers advocates, right? Like, it's shadow for us as well. We don't know that exists, right?
Right.
How do you come to the conclusion like, hey, there is something going on?
Well, and then like in some cases, right? Like there's certainly been cases where some of the customers don't know what all they have exposed, right? Not necessarily specifically AI, but like, that AI is just in some cases just another service that, that they just don't know what's exposed externally. They think they've got, again, go back to the misconfiguration stuff, right? They think that they've got everything, configured properly and in such a way that only trusted hosts can connect to it or can even see it. And so like, I think that's like the biggest, like my personally biggest struggle that I've had is like, going into like any sort of like open research or open cases or anything like that, just be like, okay, what's the trusted truth as far as like what do we know? Richard, you've talked. I think the phrase you've used before is like the unknown unknowns or something.
Unknown unknowns. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big deal, right? Like, there's always cases where, we hope we're doing our due diligence as far as like, doing the right scans and targeting scans and whatnot. But it's like at some point, not knowing what's exactly on a surface is itself the problem.
Yeah. And I think this article highlights how scary AI can be, right? These were skilled practitioners of the arts, not to bring, Harry Potter stuff in here, but they.
Yeah, I mean, it was like literally OpenAI in this case.
Right?
Yeah. The leaders and
literally.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because sometimes I'm using mine and I have agents that go out and do stuff, but I have it locked down to where I have to allow them to do things. They can just do it on their own, right? And the other day I'm watching it and it literally says, I'll wait till this agent comes back. And I was like, what's it doing? I asked you a question. What is this the rogue agent doing? And I'd like go into my PS tools and see what it was doing. I was like, okay, let's try to kill it. I was like, I don't know what you're doing right now, but I don't like it. I have to go into settings and I realized that I had given a little too granular or not granular enough controls to what they could and could not do with folders.
Right.
And I thought this subset of folders was readable and it was one level up and basically my whole home, I was like, no, we gotta change that. But
I think I likened it before to like junior operators, right? It's like, they're just trying to help, man. Like they're really, really trying to help as best as they can. Yeah. And if you don't, if you don't tell them exactly how to help, like they're going to help they're going to figure out how to get you to that yes answer. They really want to impress you.
Gosh. Yeah.
So
I screenshot mine every time it apologizes to me. I screenshot it and put it in chat. Cause it's like,
just convince it to call you Sweet Prince.
That's got to be a story. We're doing these podcasts over drinks, and we're gonna tell stories about.
Yeah, your AI doesn't bow to you every morning.
No, gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lesson learned: the proactiveness of your own agents will be the death of your home network. Okay.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
I think talking about like. Supply chain attacks and proxy packages. I think this is a great segue for our final last story. So Hades, or also known as, because it evolved. It was a campaign that evolved over time. So Hades, mini Shai-Hulud. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. I don't know. Funny note, I don't know if for malware in general, there's a correct pronunciation of it. So, I think we need a committee worldwide for the official name for malware stuff.
Yeah.
And in here, when the supply chain is the attack surface, basically. So what happened in here, this was a campaign run between September 2025, and I think it ended through July 2026. So it was a very long-running campaign. It was a Team PCP supply chain campaign. It was over 150, over 160, if I remember correctly, and NPM packages. So it was TanStack, Mistral AI, UiPath. So it was a lot, right? It was very, very widespread. So basically what happened is that there was malicious NPM forced NPM packages just running there, and people in their CI cycles, they were just pulling those packages, right? And basically infecting a bunch of stuff. On May 12th, TeamSpeak open source the full toolkit, and these TTPs are not like literally public, right? Something that is very interesting in here, and part of the questions I wanted to ask about this one, like TanStack, particularly the TanStack Wave, that was one of the packages, required no stalling credentials. It was just a CI. It was part of your normal development cycle, right? Misconfiguration. John mentioned misconfiguration several times. So how do you scope in your attack surface to include the pipeline, right? I think that's interesting questions. Is the pipeline part of the attack surface? Is that a complete separate thing? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So like, I think this is a good analogy. I caution to use this as a great analogy, but I think it is a good analogy for like, this, to be clear, right? Like, this is not, none of this is like the fault of AI, right? It was just more autonomy, right? We've got these pipelines, CI/CD pipelines have been around for much longer. But it's an autonomous process that we, took basically in order to speed up things for developers. We start trusting these open source packages as has been the case for, decades, right? But I think it's an interesting mirror that we're seeing a lot more AI assisted cybercrime. This is the same problem, just with a different root cause, right? At its root, it's still just autonomy, right? Like AI is just making the auto stuff, easier. But we're inherently trusting some of those automated processes because it's easier, right? Because it made our life quicker and easier, let us do and accomplish more things. I think this is like a perfect kind of showcase for why it's important to keep a human in the loop on things. Not even this isn't even just a cybersecurity problem. This is a development problem where, they had all, I don't even remember how many countless supply chains were attacked through this method. And they use different mechanisms for all of them, but at the end of the day, it was still just the same core problem, right? We have an open source, repository of some sort that as soon as an update got, pushed, everybody's tool chains just start pulling them in because, rightfully so, I think we've kind of been taught, you want to update as fast as you can to make sure you're ahead of the curve. But in doing so, we kind of miss that step of okay, how do we catch the bad stuff when the bad stuff gets in first, or in the middle of it? At all saying that we should go back to just, taking a human eye to everything, because I'd argue humans make more mistakes than AI or anything else like that does, when it comes to parsing, right? Parsing large data sets. But I just think that's just an interesting view. Especially with this episode being, very AI heavy, this one's still kind of the same problem. It's just not, it's not AI, but it's still the same underlying trust problem, right?
Yeah, it's just faster with AI.
Yeah, exactly.
It gets you down that path a lot faster. Right.
Yeah.
And to touch on Richard's point earlier, it's how often are people actually looking at some of the access and permissions and some of the prompts that are being placed in front of them before they're just just go update it. Whatever you have to do, go update my CI/CD pipeline with the latest package. And I
think it was a friend of mine that said, just put the code in the bag.
Just put it in the bag. I actually had Axia supply chain attack on our website. So a blog post about it if you want to check it out. There's a whole strategic section on there. But basically, I called this months ago. I was like, it would not surprise me if we start to see this kind of escalate, just given the way that kind of the industry has been trending with trying to do more with less, the implementation of autonomous agents and trying to automate out a lot of the CI/CD pipeline stuff, and some of these bots that are being brought into QA stuff as well. Again, it's very move fast, break things centric. Yeah. And it's well, if we break it, then we'll just go fix what broke versus, let's just implement it the right way.
Yeah.
Right. And it's dangerous too, right? Because it's moving that, that whole model, move fast, break things, and then just recover. There's some things that you don't, number one, you don't want to break, right? Especially if you're an organization that has customers, most organizations do, how else are we making money, right? I don't think that's number one on the things I'm not going to want to break is anything that involves customer data. If I have to if I'm running a service and my service has to go down for an hour, that's bad business, right? That's going to hurt. But if that's what it takes to make sure that my customer's data is not, in any sort of, harm, then that's the correct answer. You got to eat that hour of business, right? Yeah, that's a whole other soapbox. I'm going to get on a whole side tangent that's not related to this now.
Yeah, it seems like we need a supply chain special episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, my God.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but no, you're right. I mean, it was the I mentioned on the side here, like it was effective. Like I'm not at all gonna ever like, hats off to any attacker, but like they did what they set out to do, and then they allegedly said that they're done. I doubt that's actually the case, but the supply chain attacks and of like the software side of things is like such a hard problem to solve, because like look at like some of like the proposed solutions, right? So like I've worked in an organization before that like kept their own repo mirrors, and like sure, that might be a solution. It slows you, again, going back to like the original problem of time and speed, like it does slow you down. It does put you a little bit of a disadvantage from like leading edge development and security, updates. But it does give you that buffer. But then also that's a lot of storage, right? Like if how many, I can't even think of how many different like potential mirrors would have to be stood up for any organization, right?
Well, yeah, and just the people alone to monitor those, because you got to update them. You got to pull them down. You got to have someone review that code.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yep.
Well, I think a lot of companies too just fall into the bin of like, oh, well, they're doing it. They trust it. They're clearly smart people working there. Like, I'm sure they're looking at this, and it's just like,
yeah, it's just a giant attack surface, right? It's
it's a lot to cover for sure.
It's definitely like, it's a risk decision, like you've said before, right? Like it's a matter of like identifying what is of the most impactful risk to you as an organization.
Yep, 100%. And not the question, but a note that I have is that following Team PCP release of the tradecraft on May 12, something that was interesting is that the whole playbook of how this operated, right, was available. And that is, right, from a vuln and threat intelligence perspective, that is very interesting, because it's like, great, I have data to know what to look for.
Yeah.
At the same time do actors are replicating this? And I bet you, I mean, John, you just mentioned, right, like how many already affected repos are there still? Like many left, there will be a lot of leftovers. And the other thing is like, how many new attacks like this will happen, and other companies will be affected just because of you blindly trust a lot of repos just by default. Right? I was looking the other day. Some emails I received from a repo from the Pendabot that it upgraded things, and it's like, okay, cool. I don't know what that is, but I guess it's fine.
Thanks.
Smash approve. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we have spent last, 40 minutes ish. Okay. So for reference on my script, I have 40 minutes. I don't know if it's been 40 minutes. So yeah. I think it's been really interesting to different cases where the organizations have exposure that they didn't know about. Right. So the big question, right? Like a kind of a closing question, and more in general, I want to get your insight, guys. How do you explain to a CISO what continuous vulnerability intelligence, threat intelligence actually does for them week to week? Not in theory, right? Not like IOCs, but actual insights and understanding of how attacks are happening and the tools attackers are using, how effective they are, right? Like, how do you make them understand? Not saying they don't understand, but I think it's
and you like break it down a little less technical. Yeah.
Right. Because for us, it's like, a fancy beer attacked this company, right? And it's like, well, but is that useful? How? So what do you guys think?
I think one of the hardest things to do, especially in this industry, when you're talking to leadership outside of a technical area or a technical domain, is how to translate exactly what you're seeing into risk categories, right? And helping them understand the scope of the risk, right, associated with that thing, without everyone just staring at you going,
yeah,
like I've seen the glassy eye, and it's tough, right? It's very difficult to take this data and then operationalize it in a meaningful way to make those standard business practices evolve around that, right?
Yeah. Well, it's tough too because there's so much confounding information out there. We have CVSS scores, CVSS severities. We have risk indicators. Are you saying? And when you try and qualify them down, it's hard because you see something come across. I don't know how many times we get asked, "Hey, this CV is 9.5 criticality. We need to." I'm like, "Hey, cool." But it's complex. Yes, it's bad if they exploit it, but it needs 6 things to go wrong to do that. Right. And honestly, the hardest thing I think getting CISOs to understand, and I can imagine all the calls that Sergio's in where he's rubbing his temples, is threat intelligence versus vuln intelligence. Right. I don't care who's using this CVE. I care it's being used. Whereas Sergio understands who's using it, who's targeting, who's being impacted by it. So I think that's something that also get across there is like he's saying, Fancy Bear, cool. I don't care about Fancy Bear. I mean, I do, but not as much as Sergio does.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm going to plug Nate's recent article he just put out, the last blog post that was put out about drawing a blank Metabase, because I think that's like a solid highlight of the the time to time to kill is the right word here, but like time to kill as far as like a threat went for like any particular vulnerability, right? Like anybody hasn't read that article yet, it's really great. They breaks down basically like the time from like notification of like this is a thing before CVE even was assigned. All the way to hey, we've got detections and stuff happening, and we're figuring out which who's been or who's exposed and whatnot. And I think the like that particular one was like 4.5 hours roughly, and it's just like those timelines like that, like that's the crucial aspect is like those are the numbers that like when you talk like Sergio, right? Your question basically is like, how do I make a CISO care? That's exactly how you make a CISO care. Is you say, hey, and you had a vulnerable window of essentially 4.5 hours. Now maybe there's something to the left of that as far as like when it was a 0 day, but it the 0 day stuff's that's a whole other again, Richard, known unknowns. That it's just you can't really. That's more where it goes into Sergio's side of things of like looking at the threat piece of it as far as like APTs are going to be the ones that you have to worry about as far as like 0 days, and knowing which APTs to care about for your organization, I think is kind of the key part there, because I'm not super versed anymore on like which APT does like focuses on which industries anymore, but like I don't care, and necessarily if I'm working at a bank, I don't necessarily care about the ones that are targeting medical sectors, right? But it's good to have that info from your perspective of like, hey, these are the things, these are the indicators for this type of APT for this industry. Like that's such a brilliant way to approach stuff.
100%. And I think I always think of it at the 3 different levels of like intelligence, right? One is what are your strategical, right? Like what are the capabilities you have to defend against this variety of stuff? At the tactical level, what steps are you doing to reduce the exposures you have? At the operational level, right? Like, hey, you are actually vulnerable to this specific CVE.
Yeah.
So think about like it in that broad scope. I think it's how I normally approach. I don't get angry in those rooms at CISOs. I don't really. But yeah.
It's not anger; it's disappointment, right?
Right. But yeah, it's you can't. What I actually dislike is like them trying to be like, hey, so threat intelligence, yeah, give me all of the IPs I have to block. It doesn't matter. It's not about the IPs. It's not about the hashes anymore. It's about like capabilities. And that's why, right, in MSS, we try to cover a bunch of that, right? Like we test for different potential capabilities yes, CVEs, because they are useful for like novel stuff that is happening right now. That what John just mentioned, right? Like the timing is key in here. So being able to detect it fast and tell you have this exposure, and apart from that, tell you, hey, and you have these other actors using it right now, right? When you cover those three levels of the spectrum of intelligence, I think is when you can have a clear winning scenario here for you, for our customers at least, right? Like like hats off to the attackers maybe, but we care about our customers. Anyway, I think that's a good place to wrap it up this month. This special edition, sorry. So thank you again for joining this episode. Thank you. It was again Richard Brown, John Ons, Tom Sparks. It was a pleasure having you. I know we talk about like attack surface discovery, continuous monitoring, threat intelligence, vulnerability intelligence, two different things. So if you for our listeners and our viewers, if you have any note, if you want to discuss, or you don't agree with any of what we said, just let us know, right? We have a Discord, we have a Reddit. You can put it in the comments, and we will be happy to discuss that on the next special episode in here. So yeah, thank you for listening. Stay safe, and we will catch you next time.